Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to give people a few minutes, about a minute or so to let a few more people join. But I want to say thank you for joining us this evening for the National PE Standards Town Hall. It's a virtual public review and comment. We're so excited to be sharing with you all updates regarding the proposed guiding principles and student attributes. I have here with me Corey Dixon, Brad Brummel, Sally Jones, and we have some other task force members. Before we get into the presentation, we do ask that everyone turn their cameras off and to please stay muted. If you are a PE Standards Task Force member, we welcome you, invite you to keep your camera on if you are available and able to do so. If you are a PE Standards Task Force member, if you are not a member and just here to provide comment and to listen, to keep your camera off. Everyone will stay muted unless you are speaking. So with that being said, I am going to hand it over to Brad or Sally.
Actually, I'm gonna let Brad take the steering wheel. Brad, take it away.
Welcome, everyone. We're excited to provide an update, and Corey's going to get this party started.
All right, yeah, so good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Corey Dixon, and I'll be presenting today with Brad Brummel, a fellow task member. So we want to thank you again on behalf of the task force for attending this town hall. So also joining us will be a few other task members. You'll see them, and I'll ask them to please, of course, keep their cameras on. And again, we really look forward to sharing this information with you about our progress with our current drafts and the overall progress of our work. So as we look at our agenda for today, specifically this evening, we'll be providing an update of our progress. We'll do some collaborative work in small groups. We'll share out on that work to the larger group after that. And then allow time for feedback. Of course, to aid in the efficiency of the town hall, please hold your questions and comments allocated for our small group and in the group discussion and share out time, where we'll give you all an opportunity to share with us.
This next slide is an image that's showing the representation of the task force members and how we serve the physical education community. We're a diverse group representing different ethnicities, cultures, identities, and experiences, both professionally and personally. As you can see, we have professionals serving at all levels and in many different sectors to ensure that many voices are represented on the task force. This slide represents just how many of our task force members serve in multiple roles and have a variety of experiences. I leave each task force committee member meeting just feeling like I just left a professional development opportunity. And so we just wanted to kind of show, honor the task force members that are here and also give you a view of who serves on our task force and how diverse this group is.
And so essentially, our work as a task force aims to ensure the education of all of our students to and through the physical, and they make progress in their physical literacy journey. As you'll notice later on in our presentation, our goal from the beginning has been and is to create standards and supporting documents that address the needs of the whole student for every student. We are confident that our completed work will equitably ensure that the needs of our students are completely satisfied as it pertains to physical education in the K-12 learning context. Additionally, we are committed to producing documents that will serve our educators in their guidance of students on their path to physical literacy. And at this point in our process, it is imperative that we reiterate the reality that our work is still very much so under construction. And so at this point, nothing that we've shared, whether that be our guiding principles or student attributes or whatever, is in its final form, right? The materials that you all have been exposed to and are providing feedback on is a macro level draft of our work. It's also important to note that we are developing our documents to just transcend, current fads and trends, right? And thinking about it that way, we're really continuing to lean on the principles that found physical education.
So this is an image to try to demonstrate the process that the task force has worked through so far. You can see that we started our work by creating a draft guiding principles and draft student attributes. The guiding principles have really helped guide our work on the student attributes, and we've gone back and forth and continued to work on both of these draft documents. As well as you can see that this has led to draft standards, potential strands, and as you know, we're currently receiving feedback on the draft work, and we'll be reviewing this feedback to drive our future planning and revisions. And I know several task force members, we're all looking forward to diving into that work on future outcomes and getting into more of that micro level. So you can see we are here. We are right here. We've created the drafts, and right now we're just pausing because we find it very important that we hear the feedback and we hear your voice before we continue any more work. So you can see where we're at there. Next, we wanted to take a moment because during this feedback period, there's been some confusion about the difference between guiding principles and student attributes. And so we just wanted to take a moment to make sure that we clearly identify and communicate the difference. You can see that our guiding principles are teacher focused. They're evidence-based practices for teachers. They're used to enhance the student learning. The original purpose was to guide our task force work. They're inclusive and equitable. On the other hand, the student attributes, these are student focused. They're what our students should know, do, and feel, right? They're going to lead to our draft standards, and they're all about learning through movement, as you're going to continue to hear, and they encompass 4 learning domains. So we hope that through this slide, you'll better understand the difference between the draft guiding principles that we've created and the draft student attributes.
And so this figure provides a visual representation of our current drafts. We just apologize on the front end for this being a bit out of focus. So you may not be able to read it as clearly, but we will have this information kind of listed throughout the presentation as well. So this won't be your only opportunity to see it. But essentially our emphasis here is on learning through movement. Every component that you see here is bonded by the concept of learning through movement. While we maintain that learning to move is the quintessential element of physical education, we acknowledge that even learning to move uniquely happens through movement. And so another important aspect of this figure is that the circular shape is a representation that these attributes come in no particular order or rank. With this being said, while the figure does represent like a resistance to a hierarchical view of the student attributes, it does not imply an equal 25% split between each of these different outcomes. So our resolve is to develop these documents so that we may address each of the domains of learning, including the idea of a fourth domain being the social. And so at our last presentation as SHAPE, I presented this metaphor. So in short, if we look at this figure as a pizza, we could consider that each of the 4 student attributes here represent, let's say, for example, the crust, the sauce, the cheese, and the pepperonis, right? Pepperoni just happens to be my favorite type. So where does student learning to and through movement come? It's everything, right? Student movement is what we could consider to be like the calories. No matter where or what you bite on this pizza, you're going to get calories, right? And so that's how we see movement and learning to move and learning through movement kind of coming into this representation. In a similar sentiment, movement will be a consistent feature of every component of our completed materials as those continue to be developed. And this is yet another worthwhile visual representation of the 4 student attributes. Though this is not completely comprehensive in its current form, of course, it provides the structure and makes tangible our current direction with our drafts. One key takeaway for this particular slide is that the multiple domains can be served in a single attribute or standard, right? So though there is consistency with these attributes in the domains of learning, each domain is not solely situated with a particular attribute. And so all of the domains of learning and different aspects of learning can be addressed in each of these various attributes that you see here.
Gonna pause for a moment and check in with our chair, Sally Jones. Sally, is there anything that you would like to input so far before we move forward?
No, you
Okay.
all are doing wonderful. I think let's keep rolling.
Okay, I noticed you were unmuted, so I was just checking in on the chair. All right. Corey, thanks for talking us through those 2 images, those 2 infographics. We're now going to jump into just looking at each individual student attribute so that you can see the description, that draft standard, and some of the potential strands. And then we're going to try to make some connections to the draft standard or the draft attribute to our current shape standards. So you can see that this attribute that's being displayed right now is the motor competency attribute. It's focused on developing motor skills. We would like to just kind of connect this current draft attribute and standard to current shape standard 1 and 2. I think it's easy to make some connections there between the motor skills, the fundamental and specialized skills, movement concepts, strategies and tactics. The one thing that you'll find added to the current draft attribute is meaningful movement experiences. And so you'll see and you'll hear a lot of focus on meaningful movement experiences. And if I apologize if we move as you're kind of currently reading a description, you will get access to the shape developed draft where you'll get more time to review. So let's move to the next one. This is the well-being attribute, and this is focusing on analyzing factors and applying strategies that affect and improve well-being. This could include goal setting, health-related fitness, and concepts that are important for students to know to be able to make those healthy choices related to their own physical and health and well-being. So we would like to make the connection from this current draft attribute and standard to current shape standards 2 and 3.
And so on this slide, you'll see the social responsibility and emotional well-being attribute, and it's focused on social and emotional skills that enhance well-being. This can include responsibility, self-awareness, self-management, and relationship skills. And so here, notice how the draft standard and potential strands connect to current shape standard number 4. And we'll give you a few moments to review this slide. And so next, you see this meaningful movement experiences. And so the meaningful movement experiences attribute is focused on reflection and finding meaning in movement. This could include challenge, exploration, self-expression, enjoyment, and social interaction. And so you can see here how the draft standard and potential strands connect to current shape standard number 5.
At this time, I'm going to ask if Michelle or Sally can provide the link to the shape created draft attributes and standards. Michelle, do you have those available to put in the chat?
since I'm recording, I cannot minimize my screen, but if Sally, if you could bring them up, and please use the one that's from the Shape America website.
I'm on it.
Thank you.
You've got it, Sally?
Yep, just give me
Okay.
just a moment.
No problem. While you're getting that in the chat, I will go over our next directions. Get my slides back up. 1 second.
I'm having to sign back into Google.
Don't you love that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we are back. So if you've attended the first town hall, you'll notice that we tried to keep our update a little shorter to provide additional time for some small breakout group discussion. Because one thing we found out at the convention in New Orleans is that there was a lot of power in educators getting to voice and have some conversation and collaboration about the draft standards. Because a lot of times our thoughts and our opinions and our feedback they move forward when we're able to have those meaningful conversations with other educators in our circles. So within this next direction, when you see the link in the chat, we're going to provide just a couple minutes for you to really dive in deep, go back and review the attribute that you want to go back to. We should be able to provide at least 3 minutes for you to review. We would challenge you to be thinking about a notice or a wonder that you would be willing to share in your small breakout room. And we'll give more directions for that breakout room after your review, because I'm going to chunk our directions. So Sally, are you doing good on the link?
I'm almost there.
Okay, while Sally's providing the link, would you please put in the chat what the temperature is where you're currently at today? I did a short 3-mile run in Springfield, Missouri in 90 degrees and felt like I was barely going to make it back home.
Okay, I have the link ready. So once all these degrees stop coming in, I will throw up the link.
Ooh, 64. Jealous.
All right, it looks like we've come to an end. Here is the link to the student attributes.
All right.
Just remember that this is a draft document.
So again, at this time, I'm going to be quiet and allow 3 minutes for you to review. And then we'll bring you back for directions for small group.
Please do not edit anything. Thank you.
Welcome back to those of you that have made it back. Feel free to keep your camera on at this time. I know we still have some members coming back, so we'll give a couple more moments.
Hey, Brad, I just wanted to let you know there's a couple of us who can't turn on our cameras because it says that we don't have access. I don't know if that's something you're able to look at on your end or not.
Okay. Yeah, Michelle can take a look. Thanks for letting me know. And it's no big deal if you need your camera off at this time. We just wanted to make sure that members knew that they could turn their camera on, because we asked at the beginning of the presentation and the update for cameras to be off. So right now is an appropriate time for those of you that want to have your camera on to turn on their camera. We're going to do some whole group share out. Hopefully you were, yes, Sally.
Before we get into that whole group share out, there's just one thing I would quickly like to address. I saw that there were 2 questions in the chat that were asking about timeline. And I wanted to just kind of try to answer that question very quickly. Ideally, the task force would like, and we are hopeful that we would be able to get this work ready for rollout and to be presented at Shape Seattle in 2023. However, it is more important for us to get this work done right. And so if we do not meet that hopeful deadline, we will continue working on that to get it done. And we will continue to communicate those timelines as we move forward. But that is what our hope and aim is. But it's a pencil date. So I just wanted to answer that question. So Brad, if you wanted to take away and into our group discussion.
Sure.
I
Thanks,
think we're
Ally.
ready.
So hopefully you had a great conversation and collaboration in your small breakout group. We are going to provide some time now for that spokesperson from each small breakout group to share their notice or share their wonder, ask a question to the task force if they're seeking clarity. And so I would invite breakout group number 2 for their spokesperson to come off of mute and provide their notice or wonder. And breakout group 3 will have you go next. So if you'll be prepared to share your notice or wonder next.
Joseph, that's us. We're too.
Thank you, Terry.
Sorry about that. I didn't know what number I was.
No problem.
So the general discussion was concern over change and how it would be accepted in the field, particularly about the guiding principles. There was some discussion about the motor skills in the current set of standards, and how kids, once they progress beyond elementary school, are having difficulty performing motor skills and meeting standards, and hoping that inclusion means some restructuring of that. And then there was a discussion on how teachers could be, for lack of a better word, indoctrinated to the principles, and how that would play out in the field with those instructor expectations being part of the new standards, and how that information would get distributed. Terry, help me if I missed something.
No, fantastic job. I think you nailed it.
Okay.
Thank you, Joseph. Corey or Sally, any follow-up questions for Joseph or Terry or their small group? Okay. Joseph, thanks for communicating your small groups thoughts and notices. This is great for our task force to hear your feedback. So if at this time, breakout group 3 would please have their spokesperson come off mute and share their notice or wonder.
Hi there, friends. This is Kelly Zerby from Illinois. I don't have a working camera. It's not your fault. It's my Chromebook's fault.
No problem.
I am an elementary teacher, and I was meeting with 2 college educators, and we were kind of talking about future professionals and how we hope that these make sense to them as they come through their learning adventures in college. And also just overall, we liked the route it was going. We noticed the word fitness wasn't there, so we did like the word wellness in its place. And we just hope that there's in the end, another nice chart of scope and sequence when we look at it, because that's the easiest way to show students, and especially the littles. When I think of my kindergartners through 5th graders, how I'm trying to explain their standards to them, and how, I like to explain to them how they grow since I see them for 6 years. So a nice way to look at them vertically. And that's that.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for sharing your group's comments, thoughts, and notices. Breakout group number 4, it is your turn.
Hi, this is Adam Howell from Oregon. I apologize for my cold voice. I'm trying to get over a cold right now. But our breakout group, we had a diverse set of experiences in that group with university professors and practitioners, K-12, and a state level coordinator. So We had a lot to share and talk about. I think several big themes came out of our conversation. The first one was several people in our group noticed kind of how currently with the guiding principles and student attributes where standards 1 and 2 as they're currently written are kind of what almost seem to be merged isn't the correct word, but there seems to be a blend of those two standards in the current thinking by the task force. And so some of the things our group noticed is that with the way it is now with them separate, there's a desire to keep that separate because it's a lot. And I think there's some concern, and they're different things. And so there was some concern that if they are blended, what is that going to look like, particularly in terms of assessment and things like that, that are useful for people in the field to actually be able to have standards that are usable. The second thing we really kind of notice is what a lot of people probably have talked about is the overarching themes of social emotional learning, inclusiveness, equity within the guiding principles and student outcomes. And as our conversation, we were saying, when the standards were first revised, and we've said for years that that's our standard for contained social emotional learning. But I think if we really want to do that right, obviously it needs to be a lot more comprehensive because standard 4, the way it's currently written, doesn't really meet the needs, I think, of what we aspire to as a profession. Some things that I personally notice with that is, if we are really concerning ourselves with equity and inclusion as we should, there's a lot in there with meaningful movement and with wellness, and when we assess what students know and are able to do, are we going to be doing that in our 4 walls in our classroom, or some of it as it's written, I get the impression it's almost like stuff they transfer to outside of our 4 walls. And is that something students can control or not? So if we're really focusing on equity, what is that going to look like as far as assessing those attributes? And then finally, I'll put it out there, worthy of conversation, our professional association, Shape America, you've done a great job of advocacy for a long time, but are we finally having some conversations on certain practices our profession has held near and dear that maybe are not equitable or inclusive? And I was the one who personally said it, are we looking at, fitness testing? Is that an equitable, meaningful movement experience for students? Is there going to be guidance coming from Shape America on that? Or are we beholden to organizations that have done a lot of great things for physical education, but maybe, this document is talking about evolving our practices and what that looks like. So it's more of I wonder. That's my personal wonder, I guess. But that kind of summarizes our conversation, really focusing on that standards 1 and 2 and the blend there. That was a big topic of our conversation. And then the overarching themes of social emotional learning, inclusiveness, and equity.
Thank you for sharing, Adam. Sounds like your group had a great conversation. We'll jump straight to group 5, so that way we provide enough time for everyone to share. So Jason, is that you?
I think it is.
Thank you.
So good evening, everyone. Jason Semino from Maryland. Our group had a nice, robust conversation, and really to break it down in about 4 different things, I'll go through them real quick. The first one was a wonder how physical literacy will be defined in the new document and how the philosophical shift will be perceived by the public. And with that question, what supporting materials will be included in the final publication? We also liked how SEL was moved to the forefront, knowing it's always been there, but now it is front and center in the new version. Our group didn't really understand why the standards, specifically standards 1 and 2, were combined. We had a lot of conversations about strategies and tactics and how a lot of folks liked how it's separate right now. So they wanted to know a little bit more about the need and the purpose of this change in combining those standards. And then finally, we wondered more about the movement competency versus movement experience, and not sure if the example that was provided really fits what we were driving at or what we perceived it as being. And that's what we talked about. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Jason. I want to go ahead and move on to group 6. And then if we have time at the end, then I think we can hopefully have some time to make some comments. Group 6, it's your turn to share your notice or wonder. Is it spokesperson for group 6?
Yeah, I think I'm, this is Mike Doyle from Minnesota / Wisconsin. I think I was in group 6, I'm not sure, but
Thanks, Mike.
we almost spent most of our time talking about the orange one, well-being.
Okay.
Similar to what Adam was saying, is the word fitness going to be the new F word in our profession that we're not allowed to say in class? So we had a lot of time discussing that. I actually talked to my principal at the copy machine a few days ago about that and saying how when you read it, it looks like you're talking about factors that influence well-being, and then kids make personal goals based on that instead of fitness scores. And it was interesting. His response was, well, isn't that what we're teaching them in health class? Well, why we have in health class if you're supposed to be talking about factors that influence well-being? So I thought that was pretty interesting conversation I had with him. And I think the other thing we noticed was, there's only 4 standards now, and in 2 of them, in the language of the actual standard, the word meaningful is in 2 of the 4. So a lot of emphasis on just that word meaningful. And even I went to the coffee talk in New Orleans about meaningful PE, and it's important, but to have 2 of the 4 with the word meaningful, that's really making that term and that phrase a pretty big deal in our profession now.
Thank you for sharing, Mike. Let's give our last group, number 7, a chance to share their notice or wonder.
Hi, good evening. I'm Elizabeth Payne from Virginia. Our group first noticed about the first 2 standards being combined, and there was some concern about that. They thought it should be left separate. We also discussed the social responsibility, emotional well-being. While we like the recognition of CASEL and social emotional learning and WISC being all kind of rolled in there, the term responsibility is problematic, I think. That social responsibility, if you look at the definition for that, is about moral and legal and, with, attributes just, to society. I don't know how we're going to assess that. It's not defined in this description. I think if you just took out the word responsibility and said social and emotional well-being, I think that more than covers it. The other concern with the word responsibility is that teachers turn social responsibility into social behavior, and it becomes behaviorally driven. And that's a concern that then they're grading on behavior, which is not appropriate. So that was a concern. Another thing on the meaningful movement experiences, I think it's a little muddy in there. I mean, I think we understand that we're trying to get beyond just the movement itself, and then what's the impact of that on the individual and on interaction and things. I think the meaningful movement experiences is that what students should be engaging in. Yes. So is this topic, is this attribute titled for the teacher, or is it titled for the student? So I think that it seems a little muddy in there. The other wondering we had was there's nothing in here on how and why the body moves. There's nothing in here about anatomy, physiology, center of gravity, center of support. How does the body move? Why does it move that way? Why do you need it to move? And part of that issue is science doesn't teach this. I mean, they may get anatomy and stuff in 10th grade biology, but what's that learning up until that point? So, why do I have to have muscular strength and muscular endurance? What are those muscles? What is that anatomy? So while teachers, I think, include that in their instruction, there's no reference that I can see to that in here, which we see as a wondering and a concern. Anybody else in group 7, anything I missed? Thank you.
Elizabeth, thank you for sharing your group's conversations and notices. We really appreciate everyone taking the time to come off mute and share their group's perspective and notices. To echo what Kim said in the chat, your voice does matter. I know that task force members were taking notes. I know the recording is going to be provided for task members that were not able to be here. And so we're excited to take the feedback that we've heard tonight and digest it and have further conversation around what we've heard tonight. We're going to move to the last portion of our presentation tonight. And so I'll allow Corey to provide some next steps.
So at this point, we just got 2 slides to go. So hang in there with us. All right, 2 pretty quick, short slides. So at this time, we just want to remind you all of upcoming next steps as it pertains to the PE standards revisions. First, on May 16th, our survey for public review and comment will be closed for further input. So if you are seeking to put input in, you definitely want to do that before the 16th. And additionally, during the months of May and July, the task force will review and make edits accordingly, and then begin the next phase of our work. All right, and so regarding public review and comment, I definitely speak on behalf of the task force when I express a genuine thank you and extend gratitude for all of the exceptional feedback that you all have provided as a field. Over 600 of you have already provided feedback, and it has been overwhelmingly supportive and constructive. And that's been really, really helpful. All of your feedback has motivated and really reinvigorated us as a task force to continue the work that we set out to do. So again, thank you for all of the feedback that you've provided up until this point, whether it be in a form like this or explicitly through the survey. So if you have yet to provide and would like to, please feel free to kind of scan this QR code provided here on this slide, or follow the links via the Shape America website. And so with that being said, again, we want to not only thank you for your comments and feedback, but thank you for your time and attention during this town hall meeting.
All right. Thanks for attending tonight's town hall. It says a lot about you as an educator to come and spend time to learn and provide feedback, and something that we all know is very important to the future of our profession. So thank you so much for attending, and have a great night.